Trend of Big Three electric vehicle companies in China. Big Three EV companies in China, whose stock prices once rose to the point of bubble theory, have also lost a lot of bubbles for months. Shares of EV stocks represented by Tesla continued to be sluggish for a while. According to the overall car market in China, sales of cars totaled 1.69 million units in April. It increased by 9.1% compared to the same month last year, but decreased by 8.2% compared to the previous month. Also, sales of electric vehicles stood at 132,000 units, up 212% year-on-year, but also decreased by 15% compared to March. Due to Corona-19, the size of China's automobile market decreased sharply in the first half of last year, but in April, production failed to keep up with market demand due to a lack of global semiconductor supply. Rising interest rates are also becoming a bigger negative factor for the EV companies that are still financially burdened. Recently, there has been a slight rebound as performance improvement has been confirmed. Institutional investors increased their stakes in the first quarter when stock prices fell a lot. Vanguard Group bought 13 million shares of NIO, 3 million shares of Xpeng, and 9 million shares of Li Auto. Hedge fund Quater Management bought 6 million shares of Xpeng and 11 million more of Li Auto. The Bank of Norway has bought 13 million shares of NIO. BlackRock bought 5 million shares of Li Auto. Baillie Gifford has bought 9 million shares of Li Auto. Let's look at the current status and prospects of Big Three EV companies in China. 1. Stock price. NIO, considered the leader in the Big Three, is currently trading at around $35 on the New York Stock Exchange. The highest price in February was $63, so it went down by half. Xpeng shares are down nearly 50% from a recent high of $57 to $29, and Li Auto is down from $40 to $20. In terms of market capitalization, the NIO once outpaced General Motors by growing to $100 billion, but now it's $50 billion. It is ranked 9th among global automakers. Xpeng is $19 billion and Li Auto is around $15 billion. For your information, Tesla is about $550 billion recently, and it's still twice as far ahead of second-ranked Toyota. The reason is that Tesla's share price rally, which has been led by Tesla, is generally losing steam. In addition, technology stocks weakened due to rising interest rates in the US stock market, which led to a drop in Chinese EV stocks. In 3 months, the S&P 500 rose more than 6%, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq lost more than 4%. 2. Earning. According to the NIO's recent first quarter results, the company posted a net loss of $70 million in sales of $1.2 billion. Sales have increased 6 times compared to the first quarter of last year. It's still in the red, but it's reduced its losses by 70%. Net loss was $265 million in the first quarter of last year and $827 million in annual losses. According to the consensus of securities firms, sales are expected to be $577 million this year, more than double from last year. Net loss is expected to decrease by 40% to $468 million. In general, there are many observations that the year after next and 2023 will produce an annual surplus. Xpeng also reduced its deficit. It posted a net loss of $122 million in sales of $468 million in the first quarter. Sales have increased 8 times compared to the first quarter of last year, and net loss has decreased by 15% from $145 million last year. According to the Xpeng performance forecast, this year's sales are expected to be around $249 million, 3 times higher than last year's $900 million. However, Xpeng still has less sales than NIO, so the surplus is expected to be around 2024. Li Auto hasn't released its first quarter results yet, but it's expected to be able to make an annual surplus because it's already in the fourth quarter of last year and sales continue to increase this year. 3. Sales. NIO sold 20,060 units in the first quarter, up more than 5 times from 3,838 units in the first quarter of last year. This trend continued in April. NIO's sales in April were 7,102 units, up 125% from April last year. It's about 2% less than last March. The NIO estimated sales of 21,000 to 22,000 units in the second quarter. Sales are forecast to be between $1,266 million and $1,329 million, slightly higher than in the first quarter. At the end of March, NIO had stopped its plant for 5 days due to a lack of semiconductors, so the shipment volume was originally scheduled for 25,500 units, but dropped to 19,500 units. William Li, NIO founder, says supply chain management is very difficult due to lack of semiconductors. Recently, NIO has agreed with its manufacturing partners to increase output to 20,000 units per month, and expects output to double. Xpeng sold 13,340 units in the first quarter. It's about 5 times more than the first quarter of last year. In April, we continued this trend by selling 5,100 units, up 4 times from a year earlier. Li Auto sold 12,500 units in the first quarter and tripled compared to the same period last year. In April, 5,500 units were sold, doubling from the same month last year and 13% from the previous month. By April, the sales of all Chinese electric vehicles will be 27,000 units for NIO and 18,000 units for Xpeng and Li Auto, totaling 63,000 units. Tesla, a role model for these companies, sold 95,000 units in China by April. It's still a lot more than the sales of 3 Chinese companies combined. But in April alone, 25,800 units were sold, down nearly 30% from March. At the Shanghai Motor Show in April, a Tesla's owner climbed onto the roof of an exhibition vehicle and staged a surprise protest claiming the brake problem, and a boycott took place due to Tesla's complacency in responding to the issue. In the future, we need to pay attention to the sales gap between Tesla and Chinese big 3 EV companies.